Hello, people. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are watching us live on Facebook broadcast. This is the Sunshine Silas Show. And this is how we do it every time we come on the Sunshine Silas Show, bringing you inspiration, bringing you information, and definitely entertainment that is going to take you from where you are to where you ought to be in destiny. What a pleasure, what a delight to join with me on the stage tonight, a beautiful, intelligent, wonderful lady doing phenomenally all across the world, impacting not just our community in Tampa Bay, Florida, but the whole of the United States and the world at large. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me. Welcome our very own special guest tonight on the Sunshine Silas Show, Mrs. Riana Milna.
Ah, what an introduction. My goodness. Thank you so much, Sunshine. Hello, everybody.
What a pleasure to have you on the show. I
Thank
want
you
to
for having me.
sincerely apologize for what happened the last time we scheduled the episode to have you on the show due to technical reasons. We couldn't broadcast live, but to just let the audience know what a wonderful person you are. Despite your busy schedule, you still made that time. You kept to your word. You fulfilled your promise
Of
to come
course.
back on the Sunshine Silence Show. We want to tell you that we love you. We appreciate you. We celebrate you. Thank you
Ah,
so much.
thank you so much. Of course I would. I understand technical little difficulties. It's happened to all of us in
It's
internet land.
it's such an honor to have you tonight. So I know that you're a very busy person. You have a whole lot of schedule ahead of you. So we'll try to just kickstart the show right away. Mrs.
Okay.
Rana May, you are a woman of many parts. You've worn so many hats. You are a certified global life and love coach. You are also a certified um, trauma and addiction professional. I mean, you've done
Mhm.
so many incredible things, and it's difficult to just define you based on one perspective. One perspective. So I want to ask, who is Riana Milna? Let's get to know you beyond all of the awards and all of the accolades.
Okay. Well, I'm a great mom and grandma. My one daughter is pregnant with twins.
Wow.
My daughter Alexi, who puts water wells in Tanzania, Africa, and I know that's your home country.
Yeah.
So she's due in March with a little boy and a girl. So I'm super excited about that. That's a big part of my life, raising my girls, who are both very successful. And now being a grandma is pretty special too. And, that's it. I mean, I really enjoy life. I love world travel. I love meeting people of different lands and cultures and seeing history and architecture, and very, very excited about, sharing their foods and just sitting out and listening to their music at a cafe, simple but beautiful things. I just really enjoy every day. Life is very special. I'm very blessed.
You're a very simple person, and you said life is very special, and you're so blessed. You are a wife, you are a mother, and now you are a grandmother. And beyond that, you are also a certified life and global coach. And the truth is, from your resume, you are someone who has a lot of experience and expertise working with people who have experienced trauma in one form or the other. There's been a lot of talk in the public space about how trauma affects people, whether it's an individual or how it spills over to their performance on the job. So I want to ask you as an expert, how does trauma hold one back from experiencing a fruitful relationship and living the life of their dreams?
Oh, there's so much to tell you. We could talk for hours on this. But yes, my research is in correlation with the research from the Kaiser Permanente group out of San Diego, California. And they had found, using over 17,000 people, that childhood trauma impacts an adult in bringing on early onset of illness and diseases. And at the same time, in 2011, personally, I was going through a difficult relationship situation with a man I loved and adored, had a whole secret life.
Mm.
And he was a principal at a school and got caught with porn on his computer. He gets instantly fired. And this was new information to me and to the superintendent that introduced us. And of course, I had a thriving practice at that time. So it hurt me in business. It hurt me personally. It hurt our reputation in the community. And it was nothing I did because I was living in integrity, but his life of non-integrity, it blew us up. I mean, it just changed my life severely. So I went on a mission to find out why would he do this when we had really an amazing relationship. Nothing visually to the outside world, to our world, was wrong. So it's like, who is this other person that had this secret life? And I uncovered, using first ACOA work, which is adult child of an alcoholic, starting there and then diving deeper into psychology. Now I have a triple master's, but none of this was taught. And then I correlated with what I was doing in my profession as a licensed mental health counselor of 20 years, because I worked with all grade levels in the schools from kindergarten through college as a counselor who saw the emotionally upset child. And the majority came from traumatic homes. And then I'd work in drug and alcohol centers. Why did the addiction come? Well, they came from traumatic childhoods. And then working with women from the prison system and working in a hospital child and adolescent unit, kids who were had eating disorders or suicidal. So putting all that together, people of trauma, I recognized 10 common traumas that kept coming up in all of this different population, different ages, male, female, children, women. I mean, just it all correlated. So there's more than 10 traumas actually, but I talk about the top 10 traumas that I saw most often, and I created my childhood trauma checklist. And from that checklist, I noticed my husband at that time had 9 out of the 10 traumas. So he grew up in a very toxic environment, alcoholic father who was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and I will go over the 10 traumas. But that greatly impacted our love relationship and what he chose to do, which was unconscious and dysfunctional behaviors throughout his adult life, and he just happened to get caught. So that's what led me to doing what I do today.
Wow, quite impressive.
Well, yeah, and if it doesn't get healed, unfortunately, what happens is a lot of these relationships suffer. I know in the US, our divorce rate is about 60%, and it leads to a lot of toxic behaviors in relationships, and people don't know why. The person that was so wonderful in the beginning ends up being so toxic. About the studies I saw were like 6 months to 1 year in, things started to change, or as soon as there was a commitment, like an engagement, a marriage, living together, or a baby, then things would drastically change within a partner or the dynamic of the relationship.
Wow, you said you've handled cases of trauma. You've been a specialist in this field, and you're so versatile because you've handled issues from the grade level all the way to college. You've been to prisons, and you've even counseled individuals. And what I love most about this is you are not just talking the talk, you are also walking the walk because you've experienced trauma firsthand.
That's right.
So when
yeah, that was my journey. Yeah.
Yes.
Sunshine, I took my pain and made it my passion and my purpose. So that's why I love the work that I do. And I understand every client that I work with, I understand their pain. And I dig deep into the trauma, and everyone I work with is a whole different individual puzzle. So no client is like the other. And that's what makes my work fascinating and enjoyable. And, together we do the journey together to go from unconscious, fear-based negative thinking to full conscious awareness and a sense of peace and happiness. And everyone will be challenged in life. We're supposed to be. This is the Earth School according to Buddhism. So we're supposed to be challenged, but then you look at it in a different way when you're living in more conscious and peaceful awareness.
Wow. Yeah. The truth is, when you talk with your patients, I can imagine that you put your heart into it because you also experience what they have experienced, you feel what they have felt. But going further, you also mentioned about the 10 traumas that people experience in childhood that later have those consequences and effects in their adult life. Can you please just share with us what are these 10 traumas? So for members of the audience, they might want to take that checklist and look at their lives and find out, hey, is there something that's mentioned on this list that I'm actually practicing?
For sure. I would love to go into the 10 traumas. And as I go through this list, I'm going to encourage the listeners to Write these down, get a pen and paper, write them down, and make 3 columns. The first column, you put me. Second column, put partner or partner you remember struggling with. And the third one, put mom or dad. And
Mom
if
and
your
dad.
mom had the same situation or your dad, put that down or put both. Now, all the studies show, as more trauma work is coming out in research, that childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. So if you're seeing yourself with childhood trauma, your parents had it and likely their parents had it. So it keeps going through the generations until one person gets the information, processes the trauma out of their brain and their body cells, and then heals and then changes the dynamic for their children. So even those of us, I was a single mom most of my life for my 2 daughters. They grew up to be very, very successful women, out of the home by 19. And, the one I said is putting water wells in Africa since the age of 20. She's also, in Forbes and Inc. magazine, top 11 entrepreneurs. So it doesn't mean like you have to stay in this toxic relationship to raise kids successfully. They actually will be happier, more successful with one balanced, spiritual based parent and not the toxic environment if that's going on for you. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so here we go, the 10 traumas. Now, as I go through them, I want your audiences to remember that we're not looking to blame your parents and we're not looking for you to feel any guilt or shame. And that's really important because you are a young, innocent child. These things just happen to you. So we're trying to ask you to dig deep and look for the facts. Did these facts happen to you? So the first one is if mom or dad had any addiction. Now, interestingly enough, the Kaiser study only mentioned, did they use drugs or alcohol? Now, I'm an alcohol and drug licensed therapist. So there's a lot more addictions than those 2. So I name 11, drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning a chronic cheater and the parent, porn, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating disorders, spending addiction, like spending to get things mean love, gaming, TV watching, or workaholism. So those are just 11 addictions. I'm sure there's more out there, but those are some of the common ones. Second is verbal abuse. Now, this could be watching mom or dad fighting and screaming a lot, or it could be screaming at you. But with my work, I identify deeper. I worked with kids who never heard the words, I love you, or great job, or I'm proud of you. Instead, they're hearing things like, you'll amount to no good, your opinion doesn't matter, keep your mouth quiet, I don't care what you have to say. These are all forms of verbal abuses that do work on an adult psyche of not feeling good enough. The third one is emotional abuse or neglect. And, we know those severe types of neglect where mom and dad weren't around, you're left at home for long periods of time, you remember being afraid, those types of things. Next one is physical abuse, any kind of beatings, a rape or a molestation, and that could have happened inside or outside of the home. Those I always thought were level 10, but some of these other ones are all considered level, they could be level 10 too, which means when I get all the traumas from my client, I have to see how severe were they. So someone who's beat every other day, that's certainly a level 10 versus someone that had 3 beatings in their childhood, but they were bad, that might've been a level 3 for them, instead of a level 10. Okay, so the next one is abandonment, and I named 2 types, fault and no fault abandonment. Now, this, interesting enough, was not even in the original Kaiser study, but I worked with so many kids of abandonment that it was such a big trauma, and there's 2 types. So one type, no fault, is like if a parent dies early. Okay, it's not the parent's fault, it just happened. Or if a parent goes off to fight the wars for their country, that child is always afraid, will my mom or dad come home? Another no fault abandonment was like my dad. He was FBI and CIA, so he traveled a lot. We didn't know where he was. And I used to ask my mom, like, when's dad coming home? And she said, well, I don't know where he is. I'm like, well, why does, his wife, my mom, knows where he is, which was very scary for a child. Like, where's my dad? Is he okay? Right? And we'd always like celebrate when he'd walk in the door. And then there's false abandonment. And something like that is if a parent chooses to never know their child or not be active in their child's life, or if there's a divorce and they don't show up much in their child's life, or they're inconsistent in showing up, or even when their child is spending time and they're checking out, watching TV, or spending more time with their girlfriend or their new boyfriend instead of that child. So those are fault abandonments, okay? Then the next one would be if you were adopted, part of foster care, or had to go live at other people's homes because mom or dad couldn't take care of you, or you couldn't be at their home for some reason. So that even means grandparents or aunts and uncles' houses or family friends. Trauma number 7 is the most common, that I call personal trauma, which is if you were ever bullied. You might have had a medical issue when you were a child, making you feel different than everybody else. If you didn't fit in school, you were teased, you weren't part of the athletic team, whatever that could be. You might have been an overweight child or skinny and gawky child. That was me. I was skinny with big glasses, so I was teased a lot, so I got to look at that. But anything that makes you feel different or not good enough. And ironically, trauma number 7 can make you either very successful in business,
okay,
or flounder in business because you're afraid to take risk and you just stay stuck. That might be the person who hates their job but refuses to leave and comes home and complains every day about it. But they don't have the guts or the confidence to move forward into something else. Okay, trauma number 8 is sibling trauma. So that could have been your sibling bullied you, or your sibling would have been born with a medical condition that commanded more of mom and dad's time, or most likely they are perceived by you to be the golden child. So I was 4th out of 5 kids. I had an older brother, younger brother, and my mom really favored the boys psychologically because the man in her life wasn't around. So these boys, and I love my brothers. I'm closest to my brothers and my other 2 sisters because I was born in between them, but they were her golden children. Okay, trauma number 9. I actually have 2 categories now. I had to pull one in from the longer list and put it in the top 10 because it's getting so prevalent, especially in the US. And there's 2. One is community trauma. So community trauma is our mass shootings in the community or in our schools. It's also loss of home and communities by flood, fire, hurricanes, mudslides, volcanoes, any of these horrible natural disasters that are wiping out huge communities. And this, of course, is traumatic for adults, but can you imagine our little children trying to live and survive through this? It's a very scary thing, very traumatic. And the other one there is family trauma. So this is if any of your parents were incarcerated, if you grew up in a dangerous neighborhood and were afraid to walk to school, if there was a lot of lack or poverty in your life, losing a home from the mortgage crises, or anything else that's happening to your family that's effective. If your family was in the military here in US, they have to move every 2 to 4 years to a different city or a different location. And that means that child has to get used to a brand new school all over again. And that's very hard for them. Trauma number 10 is if you perceived your mom or dad to have a mental health issue. Me being part of the baby boomers, our parents didn't go to counseling back then. So we didn't know, but you can kind of guess. And the 2 most difficult mental illnesses I would describe as borderline and bipolar. So bipolar means manic and depressive. Depression can come out as checking out emotionally. Anger is part of depression, or just emotionally, exhausted. And manic, people say, is that the high and happy person? Well, it could be, but it's also tied to like a spending spree, eating binge, gambling spree, something like that. That's a manic phase. And then borderline personality disorder is a lot of fast changing moods. When they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid. And there's a lot of fast trigger anger over things that most people wouldn't get angry about. And kids are left to wondering, like, what's their mood going to be when I come home today? And that's very hard for a little child to emotionally navigate, that they always feel like they're walking on eggshells around their parent. So those are the 10 traumas I describe.
Wow, this is just so scary listening to you enumerate all of this. It is scary for me because these are the things that ordinarily we see and we take for granted. And most
A lot of
people,
people think, no, I just had a normal childhood and said, well, wait a
that's the
minute, I had
truth.
6 of those. Yeah.
That's the truth. A lot of people don't even know that those are signs of childhood traumas. I mean, I have friends, and aside from having friends, let me even point the touch on myself. There are some of the things that you have enumerated. I'm like, hey, Silas, are you sure you're not a victim of this? Because I take it for granted, and I feel that hey, it's quite normal because no one told me that this was a symptom of trauma. And I believe that for most members of the audience, it's also possible that a whole lot of these things that you have mentioned, these factors, examples of childhood trauma, are what they experience in everyday life. And I'm glad we're having this discussion today because now you are not just pointing and shedding the light on it, but you're also going to tell us how best we can tackle this issue. And based
Yeah.
based on how serious it is, I want to take this a bit further. Can you share with us some examples of destructive patterns that emerge from people who have experienced some form of childhood trauma that is now evident in their love relationship?
Yeah, this is really important. This is what I specialize in, where Kaiser's specialized on the health aspect. I specialize on the emotional health aspect and how it's
Mm,
affecting you in both life and love, both. So
mm,
let's talk about love first, and then I'll go into some life examples. So in love, the patterns, what happened is when you're a little child, you don't have the emotional capacity to handle this trauma that's happening in your world or to you. So you either shut down, get really quiet, because those might be the kids that might be beat by dad, so they're not going to dare say anything, or the kids that act out as teenagers. Like I'll
mm,
show them, or they become sexually active to feel love, or they start cutting, or they're suicidal, or start using drugs and alcohol early, just to handle not feeling good enough or not fitting in or feeling different. So there's a lot of dysfunctional patterns that start as children and escalate as teens. And then when you're an adult in love, this is when it really comes out. So the studies show people of trauma attract people of trauma. And
mm,
initially, these relationships, the first month to the fourth or the fifth month, they're very romantic, very passionate. They tend to spend a lot of time giving each other attention. So a lot of texting or emails going back and forth, very passionate relationships. And then when it starts getting serious, like I said, that fourth month to 1 year, if they say we're
mm,
exclusive or let's live together or let's get engaged, let's get married or let's have that baby, those life stage changing moments is usually they try to be their very best, right? Because they really want love, they crave love,
mm.
so
That's
they
true.
give it their best, and then once it's solidified, they start relaxing, and then the behaviors
Mm,
can start showing. So this can be, let's talk about jealousy and control. Where's that come from? Well, that comes a lot from trauma number 7, not feeling good
mm,
enough, or verbal abuse, being told you're no good, emotional abuse, physical abuse. So it can be a combination of any of those. And, you may be very successful in business, but struggle in love.
mm,
So again, if you had trauma number 7, that could be saying, well, they're telling me I'll amount to nothing. Watch me. I'm going to become successful. And they do. But then when it comes to love, they're not healed,
yeah.
right? I love the biography of Quincy Jones, who's a brilliant music producer, film producer, director, helped a lot of kids break out in the music industry, just a beautiful soul. And at the end of this documentary that showed all the accolades of his life, they said, is there any area you didn't excel in? He goes, yes, love. And I'm
Wow.
like, there it is. And his story
Wow.
was very sad as a child. He grew up in poverty in Chicago, and he said his parents were both drug addicts, and he had to go live with his grandmother, and there was no food or money. And if she caught a rat, that was dinner that night. So you can imagine, he had most of the traumas there and trauma number 7, but he started working as a young boy to help support the family at 14 with
Mm,
music. So music saved him. So he excelled, but he didn't do well in love. And he had broken relationships with his kids most of his life. I mean, it healed later in life, but most of his adult life, he struggled in relationships. So that's very, very common. Impulsivity, where's that come from? That comes from maybe somebody growing up with lack. And this is where a spending addiction might happen. It's like, I see that. I want that. I didn't get it as a kid. I deserve to have that now. You know, and even if it's an impulsive action that would hurt the relationship, they're unconscious once it's so bad that they'll do it, even though it's destructive, right? And impulsivity is one of the worst dynamics that hurts not only you, but your partner, right? Because it's very sabotaging. One that women do a lot is called people pleasing. And let's say there's a little girl that grows up with an alcoholic mom who's, you know, drunk at night and hungover in the morning, and she's miserable. And so the older daughter may just people please her to death to keep peace in the house and get her siblings ready for school and dress and make the lunches and get them breakfast, get them out to the bus stop. So she learned to have love and feel love. I have to overdo and people please. So these are the women I'm seeing in marriages that come to me and say, no one loves me like I love them. I do everything for everybody. Nobody says thank you. You know, I overdo for my husbands, my kids. They don't love me like I love them. And really her boundaries are so stretched because she learned that became normalized for her, right? Yeah. So she needs a re-education about what's healthy boundaries. Abandonment issues, that's really big. Now, if you had either fault or no fault abandonment, this leads to codependency in relationships, love addiction, like you know your partner is toxic and you break up, but you miss them so much you go back. And then you break up again and then you go back. And the pattern of toxic relationships is you break up 7 times, 7, before you finally say, I can't take it anymore. But you go through like depression and maybe post-traumatic stress when they leave you or you leave them. So you're wondering what's more painful, to be in it or out of it. And this is from abandonment issues. So every toxic happening in an adult love relationship can be looked upon through the dynamics of your childhood. So if it's not healed, what happens is people usually have repetitive relationships. I call it same person, different face. So in other words, the same personality, the same dynamic. And when you swear, I'm going to get at it different this time, I'm going to pick a different one. And then the same thing happens and it drives people crazy. And I usually see them by the 3rd or 4th toxic relationship when they say, what is going on with me? You know, and they usually can clearly see the toxic stuff in their partner, but they don't see it in themselves. You know, so we have to go to dig really deep into the root of the issues. And that's what I do, going all the way back to childhood and do some reparenting and get the unconscious to conscious awareness. You know, Dr. Phil says you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And I say you can't change what you don't understand. If you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing and it's repeating itself, it just drives you into great frustration. So that's why we identify everything and then process it. And trauma does stay healed, you know, stored in the brain and the body cells. So we have to heal it and change it and take that unconscious acting out and make it full conscious awareness. Yeah, quite a process.
It's quite a process, and you are doing an incredible job because understanding the impact and the consequences that trauma have, not just on individuals, but spilling over to their performance, their productivity, and knowing that this is what you do. You help people step out of their trauma zone, become more productive, become more effective, and in your words, to live a more fulfilling and happy life. And just listening to you talking about all of these issues, it brings to mind something that it's very random. I mean, it happens every day. I observe, and I'm sure members of the audience would agree, most times you see partners who seem very happy when they're in a relationship, that they're trying to do the best for themselves. But immediately they get married, it's like 2 different people.
Happen.
And the rest of us are surprised what went wrong, because just a couple of years back, a couple of months back, they were 2 lovebirds. But now that, like you said, they've solidified the relationship, they are married as husbands and wives, They just
They
don't
let their
seem.
defenses down. Yeah.
That's it. So, from the trauma perspective, how do you think couples like this should go about finding a solution? Because you said we cannot overcome what we do not understand. Can you
Hmm.
just shed some light on this kind of scenario?
Share some light on what?
On this kind of scenario for couples who now find themselves in a solidified relationship, but they just can't seem to pull through.
Okay. Well, when they're in that great relationship, what they first most people see some red signs. But again, if people of trauma attract people of trauma really want and crave love. So they'll just push it aside, or it'll get better when we get married, or
Mm,
everybody's got something. So they minimize what they're saying, right?
okay,
Sorry.
bless you.
So some of the things they might see is overworking, overeating, starting to drink too much, spending too much, starting to control their partners, or you're feeling controlled. That partner might have been really charming in the beginning with a lot of humor and funny. Now they're being more sarcastic and using humor against you when
Mm,
it's not really funny. Like I said, abusing drugs, alcohol, getting high more often, or demanding sex more. And they use sex to either soothe anxiety or prove that they are worthy enough, that that partner really loves them. They keep needing that validation. So sex can actually be that addiction. Remember, I said that's one of the
wow.
addictions. Passive aggressive behavior where you're afraid to share your feelings. So you
Mm,
just shut down. And then, if you shut down for a couple hours or a couple days and then you lash out about something that's not even related to the original problem, that's a sign. And then that secret life. Well, if he won't do this for me, I'll go talk to so and so on Facebook and he'll give me the compliments I want.
yeah.
So they're going outside of integrity of their relationship to
Mm,
get the accolades that they should be able to provide for themselves. Right. So seeking love or attention outside of your primary relationship is a result of childhood trauma as well.
mm,
So there's also someone that blames a lot and they never apologize. That's a sign of it. Narcissistic behavior, sociopathy, psychopathy. These are all signs of childhood trauma. So there's a lot of it. And in career, I'll give you an example in career.
okay.
Let's talk about Steve Jobs, the
Yeah.
owner and
Yeah.
developer of
Of
Apple, right?
apples. Yeah.
Brilliant man, brilliant, brilliant man. And again, I watch a lot of biographies and it really comes out clear the childhood trauma. And, he was adopted twice. So he's adopted from, I believe, an orphanage with the first parents for a couple of years and given back.
Mm,
And then he was adopted again. So in those first 5 years where the child's really supposed to attach to the parents, his trust and love in people was not there.
mm.
So he learned to, trust things, right? He
Wow.
attached to things and he was really brilliant in developing things and tons of attention and time. And it gave him the accolades and the confidence he needed, to
Mm,
feel good about himself. So his story was very sad, but it showed in the biography he had problems with his wife. His wife eventually divorced him. He didn't have a relationship with his daughter.
mm,
He was known to be a very difficult person to work for. When he was good, he was great. If something was launched, he was great. But a lot of
yeah.
times he was a tyrant. He wasn't good in communicating with people
Mm,
because he never had the foundation of trust with people. So that's an interesting story. And then there's many, many, stories like that. Oprah grew up very, very poor, was teased about her weight when she was a younger girl,
yeah.
was one of the first African American women to try to get into broadcasting. So a lot of people didn't like her. They judged her on color and race, and then she was overweight. So she's always fighting the, stigma of number seven, not feeling good
Yeah.
enough, right?
Yes.
So she was constantly focused on career, career, career. And then when she finally made it, she was described in my work in narcissism as a healthy narcissist, because she turned around, she focused only on herself, but then she turned around and helped so many people afterwards. and beautiful story and a beautiful soul and a real pioneer for all of us women. But it's really that driving force from trauma number 7 that some of us go through to take us to the top. And she grew up in extreme poverty and also, so she had a lot of the childhood traumas. And I remember out of the blue, I was turning on my TV set, and it was I think 60 Minutes or 2020, one of the news shows in US, and it says tonight topic on childhood trauma with host Oprah. I'm like, oh my God, yay. If Oprah's talking about it, this is finally coming out into the mainstream society. Because I was like trying to hit as many podcasts as I can talking about this. But, Oprah said on that show, this makes so much sense in so many ways. And in my life, she goes, I wish I knew this years ago. But this makes so much sense when I'm looking back on my journey. So I leave that on my Facebook page at Coach Riana Milna, that tape, if anybody wants to see it, because it's really enlightening when she's learning about this. And she goes, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. So.
Well, I love the way you explain it and you buttress it with the wonderful biographies, real life stories, because everybody can relate with it, from Steve Jobs to Oprah Winfrey. I mean, just listening to you, I wouldn't have known that these were the consequences of what they experienced back in childhood. You see, most of us just see them from the lenses of social media, and we can't really interpret why they do what they do until listening to an expert like you really break it down for us to understand. And I'm curious, you've said so much about trauma, and there is a word you always use. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and there is this word you always use when you talk about relationship. You said having a healthy, emotionally healthy and evolving relationship. And you seem to persist that is what everyone should strive for. We should strive to have an emotionally healthy and evolved relationship. I'd like you to just break it down. What do you mean when you say emotionally healthy and evolved relationship? And how can I
Glad you asked that, Sunshine. That's a great question, because it is so important, and every word in that description is so important. So emotionally healthy means your childhood trauma is solved. It's healed. You're peaceful. You're a more positive thinker, right? So the mindset for success is all about positivity, peace, calm, no anger, no resentment, no jealousy, no control, just peace. So that's emotionally healthy. Evolved is a spiritual term. It means being your highest and your best self. In spiritual world, we can call it also being your God-like self. So, being the best you can be, living high in integrity, being kind, being understanding, being forgiving. So that's being evolved. Okay. Conscious. Conscious means you always think before you do, say, or act. Is this for the good of all? And I was saying, if in doubt, go without. Don't do it if you're not sure. You don't do things that are just good for you. Is it good for my partner? Is it good for our relationship? I actually have one of my techniques. I use my hands to help people visually learn sometimes. So it's like, stop and ask the questions. Is this word, action, or deed going to hurt me in any way? Is it going to hurt the partner I love? Will it hurt my children or my extended family? Will it hurt my reputation in the job or in the community? And is it for the good of all? And my people learn to process that right away. Now, my ex-husband, when you look at his actions, it hurt him, it hurt me, it hurt our 4 children. We each had 2 children apiece when we met. It hurt his reputation on the job and in the community, and it was not for the good of all. And therefore, it ruined his life and hurt my life substantially. So, if you would have known that rule at that time, and you're consciously aware of that, so we always are making sure we're not hurting anybody. It's a spiritual concept. It's conscious awareness all the time. And we think before we do say and act. So that's a big part. So conscious, and then a relationship is, some of the things I say that's important is having like the balanced triangle of you, me, and us. So your life is together and drama free. Partner
Wow.
B's life is together and drama free. And together you create a life that's really beautiful. Because if one partner has their life together and the other one's constantly having issues or what I call cheap drama, it's going to pull the other one down. It will ruin the relationship. So the triangle theory is really, really important in describing, the emotionally healthy relationship. And then I say, be who you want to attract. So for women, they're like, well, I want a financially secure guy, a financially successful guy. So I say, well, are you financially secure and successful? Because most men don't want to, deal with the baggage of your problems, your prior problems before he met you. So make sure that you have your life together, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one. Another one would be, well, I call the 5-second rule. When you're meeting someone, caveman brain is very often geared towards attraction. They can't help it. That's how they were hardwired in caveman brain, way back to the beginning of time. They know in the first 5 seconds if they're attracted to that lady and want more. Really, before they start talking to them. It's very bizarre, but it is what it is. And women are hardwired for security. Cave woman brain wants security because they are the child bearers, right?
Yeah.
So when men say, oh, women just want money, no, they want security. And when women say men just want sex and attraction, well, they were made to procreate the race. So when you're putting each other down, you're attacking the cave brain that we were supposed to have to keep the race going. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. So, so that's something you have to remember, the 5-second rule. So women, dating is a competitive area. So you want to look your best and you want your life together before you go out dating. So that's why I say be a successful single first. Is your life together? Are you happy in your career? Is there no legal issues? There's no financial issues. You and your kids are great. There's no toxic kids to try to bring into a relationship. So you have to have your life together first. And that's why we, do life coaching first, then love coaching to make sure your life is together. You're living the dream life that you want as a single person. Then you meet the person where you want to be. And when you feel fantastic about yourself, you're not going to settle for someone. People settle for someone they're not thrilled about because they're still dealing from unconscious wounds. I need somebody's better than no one, so we have to watch that that's not happening. And another thing that makes a great relationship, the top 8 to 10 requirements are met. There's requirements, wants, needs, and desires. So requirements are the deal breakers. And if that person doesn't have them, or they do have something that's in your requirement list, right away, my people are strong enough to walk away. And we certainly don't fall in love due to chemistry. That's the worst way to pick a partner, because chemistry pulls you to your past. Okay, so you have to be beyond the ability to go just with chemistry. So let's talk about a couple requirements so that's clear. Let's say you're a woman, 30 years old. You definitely know you want marriage and kids. If you don't have kids in your life, you would be unhappy with that. So when they're out there dating, the first question in date one, and you don't have to be blunt about it, but just say, are you a man that you think you want marriage and kids? And if you say, yeah, I'll probably marry one day. Kids, maybe. I don't know. Maybe if she does. That's a no. A man that wants kids is like, I definitely see myself as a dad. That's an important role I definitely want in my life. That's a yes. So she doesn't move forward with anybody if it's a no. That's a requirement. It's like yes or no. For me, a requirement would be someone without any addictions, right? If they have a drinking addiction or smoking pot all the time, that's a no. I don't care how great they are, how cute they are. It's a no. I don't want any addiction issues in my life, right? So those are requirements, and they can be silly too. Like one of my clients said, he must love dogs. This is a gay male I was working with. If he doesn't love dogs, these dogs are like my children, and that partner's not right for me. And that was his first requirement, but that was that important for him. Me, I love dancing. So if that partner doesn't like to dance, that would not be the right partner for me. So, and I love world travel. someone says, well, we can travel this country. I don't really dig airplanes. No, not for me, because I'll be traveling them without you. So, you know, so these are requirements that are really important to you as an individual. We have to define those, and that's part of the dating process. And then emotional needs, there's functional needs and emotional needs, like how do you like to be loved? If you're someone that likes to hold the hand of your partner and he's like really squeamish about PDA, public display of affection, and you would like that, that's going to be a bad mix. And then functional needs, if you're a parent, will he be helping out with the kids and taking them to their sports and helping with the cooking? And if he just is one of those traditional men, like we grew up with Ozzie and Harriet in the 50s, where the man came home from work and sat in his easy chair and did nothing, and you're a woman that wants that equal partner, then that is not going to work, right? Yeah. So these are all the refining you have to do before you go out there to date. And then when you know very clearly in your mind exactly what you're looking for, the characters, the traits, the needs, the wants, the desires, all these we look at, now we're dating with full awareness. We call that, conscious dating. We know what we're looking for. And we can meet a lot of nice people and they can be our friend. But you can say, very nice to meet you, but I'm sorry, we're not quite a match. And then you move on to the next one because the world is abundant. And your match will be out there and you don't settle. And certainly we have, I think there's a series of 25 questions that my clients ask to really find out if there's unhealed childhood trauma and wounds around things. And if there are, and they haven't settled them, like, one of my ladies went out with a man, he seemed very, again, charming and doing everything for her. And she asked, so tell me about your mom and dad. Oh, my mom, she's a bitch. She's in a nursing home. If I didn't have to go visit her, I wouldn't. She was an alcoholic most of her life. She's miserable. Like, that's not healed. Right?
That's true.
And in my book, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve, that we define as a mother hater. So any man that does not like his mother will not respect this woman.
You are such an amazing teacher. The way you break it down and you explain it with so much smiles on your face, it just blew us out of the water. I mean, you are literally a walking encyclopedia on the issue of trauma, addiction, counseling, and all of that. I mean, look at the depth and the expertise you bring to this topic and how you really explain for everybody to see. You also mentioned something. You are a best-selling author. You have this phenomenal book out there that it's really helping a lot of people. And you also have a podcast. I've listened to so many episodes on your podcast and YouTube every now and then. I go out there and I try to learn as much as I can. Please, I want you to also share with some members of the audience. Tell us about this book and how can they have a copy for those who would like to get a copy right away. And what are some of the things that you discussed in this book that we may not have the time to talk about it on the show and your podcast as well?
Sure. Well, the podcast is called Lessons in Life and Love. So I'm teaching, lessons to make you a better loving partner, how to heal your childhood traumas, and then lessons in life to bring you the mindset for success. And that comes out every Friday. It's on every podcast app and on my website, lessonsinlifeandlove.com. And I have a free app, Lessons in Life and Love on the go. So you can get the podcast right there. Yes. Oh, good. Thank you, Sunshine. Very good. Yes, you can hear it free on the app and you can take it on the road with you and listen then. And then my books, I've actually written 7 books and I'm writing one right now on trauma. But the 2 books that are part of my coaching program, and they're called sister books, are meant to go together. So Live Beyond Your Dreams, From Fear and Doubt to Personal Power, Purpose, and Success. That is about the mindset for success. So that's the life book. The love book is the one that I mentioned, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve. And the love book is over 400 pages. Live is 328. Love is the one that I promoted to bestseller status, #1 in couples therapy, #1 in women in spirituality. I had to write from either a male or female point of view. So I read from a female point of view because they are the majority readers of self-help books, but it equally applies to my men. And I have had a lot of men readers, my coaching clients, my males read it and they love it too. And you can get free chapter downloads on those two books at my website, rianamilna.com. And you can also take the free love test there. There's 4 of them. The childhood trauma checklist. So if you weren't able to write it down, it's right there in the free love test. And you'll get a copy of these tests sent to you. And then I'll get a copy, and I try to reach out to everyone. It takes me a little time because I get hundreds in. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many tests coming in. But I try to reach out to everyone. And then there's the ACOA checklist, the adult child of alcoholic but other traumas, and that breaks it down even further. And then the dating red flag checklist, or the partner red flag checklist. So that one is if you think you're in a toxic relationship, check it out. It'll tell you really clearly, yes or no, if you're in a toxic relationship. And the last one is relationship readiness. Are you ready for a relationship? And you'll see the things where I say you have to be a successful single in 10 areas of your life. And that breaks it down, and you rate yourself from 1 to 10 there to see if you're really ready for a relationship right now. And they're free, and that's also my website. And then I go in deeper into the childhood traumas on my free ebook, which is at havetheloveyoudeserve.com. Havetheloveyoudeserve.com. So there's tons of free stuff all over the place, to educate.
So much resources out there that you put out for people to benefit from. And just before we let you go, I mean, listening to your story, you've not only survived, but you've also thrived. A lot of people would go through what you go through and they'll be broken down. But here you are, you went through it, you came out stronger, you came out better. What inspired you to go on this journey? And how were you able to come out stronger and better? And now you are literally actually helping people to live a better life from the very stones that were thrown at you to bring you down.
Well, a couple things, Sunshine. When I was 16, my best childhood friend, Michael, was killed by a drunk driver. And at that point, it really waked me up to like, how much time do I have in this world to make a difference, to live my dreams? And I turned spiritual after that because I needed some answers about life and the whys. Like, why would God take Michael? He was friends with the freaks, the geeks, the nerds, the jocks. He was friends to everyone. And it was a big loss in my life. He lived down the street from me. So we were childhood buddies since the age of 6. And then when I went off to Penn State, my first degree is in broadcast communications. And my roommate of 3 years was in a toxic relationship that I begged her to get out of. And I was 1 year ahead of her. So we were together 3 years, and then I moved on. And she was broken up by the time I left. And then she got back together with him again. And she ended up getting murdered. So 2 primary relationships in my life, big losses. At that time, spiritually, I was studying the Course of Miracles, just a lot of spiritual masters from around the globe. Loved Buddhism. That was very healing. And, and I'm still very spiritual to this day. I actually became an interfaith minister 21 years now.
Wow.
And I officiate a lot of weddings in the Atlantic City, New Jersey area. Now in Florida, I'm nowhere here, but, I like really the spiritual concepts are really important for healing. And my spirituality really helped me heal from the 2 toxic husbands that I had. And if I didn't have my faith, that the healing would have been a lot more difficult for me. So there's spiritual concepts in my coaching practice. And even if people say, no, I'm not religious, it's like, well, I'm not either. I'm spiritual, so it's a big difference of how you observe and live your life. But all the higher books say a lot of the same things, a lot of the good messages about, health and healing and forgiveness and courage, and treating others as you would like to be treated. So the spiritual concepts are very much the same in many, many forms of faith. So that's what got me through. And I love educating on this because when people have struggled for so many years, Like I was one of those, why do I keep getting toxic people? Oh, well, I had trauma. I didn't think so. I mean, they had trauma. I could see their trauma. And then it's like, all right, I really got to be honest here. If trauma attracts trauma, where's trauma in my life? It's like, yeah, I was bullied. That was really horrible, but is that really affecting how I feel? And yeah, I had that no fault abandonment. And yes, I wasn't giving compliments or didn't hear the words "I love you" from my mom, and my dad, I got it like when he was home, but it wasn't very often. So yeah, I had to really dig deep and look at myself too, and then heal those areas, and then become in full conscious awareness. So if people are emotionally triggered, even after they have this work, they know all the exercises to do in their mind to talk that trigger down and to heal from that trigger that might come up. So it's really, really powerful stuff.
It is. It is. And if you had a chance to live your life all over again, what would you do differently and
why? I would have liked to have not had those toxic husbands. That would have been nice. And thank God, even though I was mother, father to my daughters, they turned out so amazing. And, I mean, my life brought me to my purpose work. I've done, I made a commitment early on to travel the world once a year, even though I felt I was poor because I didn't have a lot of money. I was paying child support for joint custody. It was to a man that owed me $200,000. That was the first husband who ripped off my family. So it wasn't easy for me. Like I was struggling from my 20s on, but I did things that I loved. Like in my 20s, I had a model and talent school and agency, for 10 years. And then I ended up helping so many people through eating disorders and, young gay men to come out to their families. So I was kind of a counselor. And I'm like, I want to make this legitimate. I want to be a real counselor. So I went back for my master's in my later life to become a psychotherapist because I loved helping people. So really every step of my journey made a difference. And even the pain, like I said, that I endured became my purpose and my passion. And, when my first husband said, watch how far you'll get in this town without my last name, I said, watch me. And I didn't know how. We had a bankruptcy. I was living in a town with no family or support. I was young. I was 26 with 2 little girls to raise. And then I got stuck paying child support while I'm just trying to make it and pay my mom back $200,000. That took me like 18 years of my life, working 80-hour week, 5 jobs. So, when people say, oh, well, you have this really great life. And it's like, it wasn't always easy, but I can laugh at it now. And I've forgiven, the men of my past because I understand they were abused as children. And their toxic behavior patterns, it's not like they didn't love me, but they did things that ruined us because of their dysfunctional patterns. So it really opened my mind to love and forgiveness, and it led me to my spiritual awakening, my conscious awareness, and to helping so many people around the globe. So I guess it was my life path that was supposed to be. So it's all okay.
Such an interesting, inspiring, and absolutely phenomenal life that you're living. We are super proud of you. I mean, you are just
Thank you.
An inspiration to all of us. And I know that in our audience tonight, we have your friends, we have your fans, we have people from all across the world listening to you right now who are aspiring to walk in your shoes in terms of being successful, making an impact in their community and the world at large. So in the next 2 minutes, what word of advice do you have for members of the audience, whether it's in their personal life, it's about their career, in order to take the next steps towards their success?
Okay. So I would say the time is now. If you're not happy in your life or in your relationship, be dedicated to making a change now. Don't wait. I learned that lesson very young. And thank God I did, because I have come to, really, I've experienced great things. So, my saying is, now is the time to create that life that you desire and to have the love that you deserve. So if you're in a relationship where you're not getting love that you deserve, reach down, say, what am I doing to, be part of this equation? And if you feel you need help, reach out and get it. Don't wait. The neat thing about the mindset for success is once you learn it, you've got it forever. So yes, you may invest in coaching right now, but those skills you have forever. And my oldest client that invested was 76, and he's there. I'm the happiest I've been in my life, after 4 marriages, a gambling addiction, alcohol issue, 4 women leaving him. And he's there, I'm going to die alone. It's like, no, you won't. If you get this, you're not going to. And he's got this wonderful lady girlfriend, and they travel all over the world. He keeps sending me pictures from their cruises. It's great. So he's the happiest he's ever been, but came to me at 76. So don't wait. Recognize if there's an issue, reach out to me at my website. I do offer a life and love transformation discovery session. There is an assessment fee, but if you decide to sign up for coaching, I take it off your coaching package. So, get yourself help. You're worth it. You're totally worth it. It's time to have that life you desire and the love you deserve, for sure.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the expert, you've heard it from the coach, Riana Milna. She couldn't say it I couldn't put it any better. She said, do you want to live an emotionally healthy and evolving relationship? Do you want to live the life that you desire and have the love that you desire? The time is now. So wherever you are, this is the time for you to make it happen. And of course, our coach, Riana Milna, is always available to walk you through and give you all that you need, the tools and the resources to live an emotionally healthy and fruitful relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight on the Sunshine Silas Show. We want to express our profound gratitude to you, Mrs. Riana Milna. Thank you so much for the gift of your
Sunshine,
time,
for having
the
me.
gift of your wisdom and your expertise. Believe me, I would love to keep you longer than this. You are such an amazing guest on the show. We are learning so much from the depth of your wisdom. I hope that some other time you would like just the honor of coming again on the Sunshine Silas Show.
I would love to. Goodbye, everyone. Be happy. Life's too short not to be happy.
Life's too short not to be happy, and that is how we close the curtains on the Sunshine Silas Show tonight. Until we come your way again next time, please don't forget, life is too short not to be happy. Have a profoundly beautiful, fantastic day. Thank you.